All right, protecting sources is one of the most cherished principles of journalism, but a defamation suit against Glenn Beck and his refusal to name sources has put the media world in an uncomfortable position, standing up for what may have been a smear job or see a bedrock principle overturned. Within hours of the Boston Marathon bombing, reports surfaced that law enforcement had found a suspect.
That a suspect in the Boston Marathon bombings has been identified.
That person turned out to be Abdul Rahman Al-Harbi, a Saudi student who was injured in the bombings. Law enforcement did question Al-Harbi, but quickly cleared him of any wrongdoing. Most of the media moved on. Not Glenn Beck.
The government has not come clean, nor has really any of the mainstream media.
Beck, who has a history of seeing conspiracies everywhere, claimed Al-Harbi was involved, that he funded the attack, and that the government was covering up his role. Beck also claimed his information came from government sources.
So we know we're right.
Tell that to Al-Harbi, who is suing Beck for defamation and is demanding that he identify those government sources. Beck has so far refused, but now a federal judge is ordering that he cough up the names. This is an interesting position, Tom, because usually, as you said, journalists will back someone's right to protect their sources. But yeah, we'd like to know if he indeed did have any sources.
Right.
Another area where he's in trouble. He was trying to claim that Al-Harbi was a public figure. Well, that's been shot down. He was not a public figure. He was at the marathon, but he's going to have to cough this up.
I feel conflicted even in saying about this because I strongly believe in the need for reporters to protect sources. But I think the test comes, what is the public interest here? What is at stake? And why would the journalist want that kind of protection? Why would the journalist want a shield? Well, if you can make the argument that there is a public interest here in maintaining secrecy because somebody told me something that otherwise wouldn't have come out, would affect the guy, I would stand for that. This is not that kind of a case. I think what we're talking about here is this is libel on someone, and when you libel someone, there should be consequences there, and I don't think the journalist shield should apply to Glenn Beck in this case.
There is no First Amendment right to protect your sources.
That's right.
The courts do try to come up with a balancing test on these things. There was a case in 2002 involving the Boston Globe, in which the Globe was sued for libel in connection with the death of one of their own reporters from
Betsy Lehman.
Right, Betsy Lehman. And what happened in that case was the person who sued the Globe for libel demanded that the Globe identify their sources. The Globe refused, and the judge said, okay, you lose. And the Globe had to pay a $2.1 million settlement, not a settlement, but an award to make that case go away. I think this is very similar. Nobody's going to go to jail if Glenn Beck doesn't give up his sources. But it may mean that he loses the libel case. And I think that that's the way the libel law is designed to work, and I'm not troubled by it.
Well, he doesn't have, he is the institution. He doesn't have an institution to back him up.
He is it.
He
The
is
Blaze
it.
is him.
It's the Blaze. It's right. And so, I'm not sure that it seems that the judge herself acknowledged that this was a problematic request. It's unclear to me whether that information is needed to adjudicate the case. I mean, that's another question. I mean, another legal question is sort of how far do you have to go in order to understand the facts of the case, especially since we have established that he was not a public figure. Because I do feel that conflict. I mean, yes, there's no First Amendment right, but there is a journalistic tradition with good reason and with important foundation to allow people to protect their sources. You don't want to give that up easily.
So here we are again in a situation where you're having to support somebody you can't stand, and also you can't stand their actions. I mean, the biggest First Amendment case, and we've established that there's no First Amendment right here, but if you remember, was against the Hustler magazine owner.
Oh, yeah.
And that was all about
Larry
Flint, right. He has the right to have all this nasty stuff because his First Amendment rights were protected. In this case, you've made clear there is no First Amendment right for him to protect his sources, but journalists know, to Joanna's point, that there will be a time where that's the difference between getting, some very significant information that is about the health and welfare of the community, and you have to protect them.
And journalists
so-
go to jail
yeah,
for that. They have
exactly.
and will
Yeah.
continue to go to jail for
Exactly.
that right.
So here we are.